Mets and the Yankees are back in action. The Knicks got Charlotte. That's a huge game. Charlotte's behind them. Boston lost last night, so now the Knicks are tied with Boston. So a lot of this is starting to happen now, especially for hockey and basketball as we approach the final throes, probably the last 3 weeks of the regular season.
Sure. So what'd you think about Brian Cashman having to make some comments yesterday? You think it was if you were him, would you have done the same thing?
Yeah,
you would have.
I would have.
Really?
And the reason I would have is because Aaron Boone is starting to hear it. And we here try to be as logical and as practical as we possibly can be. And listen, Billy Martin's not walking through the door. And back in the old days, you could change things up by bringing in a personality like Billy Martin, the gut manager, the guy that was not afraid to get in anybody's face. In this day and age, it's a completely different game. It's managed a different way. And the reason that Aaron Boone is here is because he listens to the front office. He works with them very closely. Does not give them the old stiff arm. I know more baseball than you do, and he works well with that group on that side of the team. And the players actually do like him. And they may not look like they're playing for him right now, but baseball is like, again, it's a 162 game season. They'll come out of it. Eventually, they will come out of it. And eventually, the Gleyber Torreses of the world, the Aaron Judges of the world, the DJ LeMayus of the world are all going to start raking again. They're all going to start raking again, and everything's going to get back to normal. But I do think that if I'm Brian Cashman, I have to come out and say something, because if you listen to this radio station, all the fans are all over Aaron Boone. I'm like, guys, it's not Aaron Boone. He does not put the team together. He does not play the game. And if he mismanaged a game, mismanaged a substitution or a lineup matchup or something like that, which we all know that he's collaborating with the front office with, then it would be easy to say, get rid of the guy. But, he's a good guy. He's a good baseball guy. Reminds me of A.J. Hinch, who was a celebrated manager prior to all the cheating scandal down there in Houston. But, it's the players that have to start to perform. They have to start to hit. And eventually that will come. The question is it going to come this series, the next series, the series after that? Because I'll tell you, having one of the worst records, if not the worst record in baseball, is really embarrassing when it comes to the New York Yankees.
Oh, of course. Now, there's two very distinct takes that are very different on the Yankees right now. The first one is it's early. They'll figure it out. Look at the track record. Look at these guys. They'll be fine. The other is they are fundamentally flawed, and it's not about having a good regular season. It's about having a good postseason. And the roster, albeit stacked with big-time hitters, there are flaws on the roster, and we've seen it too many times. And I think the reason why it's a good argument is both sides have legitimate points. Yes, it is very early. Yes, the Yankees could still win 100 games. I mean, they started out in Boone's first year 6-9, and they ended up winning 103 games. That's only a game worse than where they are now, so sure, they could turn it around. But really, I think what the Yankee fan that's nervous keeps reminding themselves of is how they've been beaten by better teams in the postseason every single year. It's not like they have underachieved. They're just getting beat by better teams. It's not like they're going into these series and choking. They're not going into the postseason as the best team and then losing to somebody who's got no business beating them. They're going into these series and losing to better teams, and they haven't improved. And when you get off to a start where you're 5 games under 500, that's a real number regardless of where you are in the season.
But there's a real significant situation that has taken place over the last year and a half or last year and in the beginning of this season, and that is the Tampa Bay Rays. And when you compare the two teams and you look at the disparity in money that is spent on the players, it just throws gasoline on the fire. And the fact that the Rays came in here in Yankee Stadium and swept them, and Garrett Cole pitched the third of those 3 games, it's about as low as it can get. I mean, think about that for a second. And it is about as annoying and frustrating as it can get for a fan. So when you combine all the things that you just said, and then you get swept at home by the Tampa Bay Rays, who knocked you out last year, who basically have owned you. I mean, they own the Yankees.
Yep.
I mean, bitch slapped them all over the place.
Yeah, and beat them in a playoff series.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
So it's that is what is fueling this angst, this fire, this like get rid of Boone whole narrative. And I think that Brian Cashman has been around here for a long time.
Brian Cashman sucks.
Yeah, okay. And he's not going to panic. You know what I mean? He will not panic.
Yeah.
He'll make moves because we've seen him make moves in season. The fill problems, like he already made a move, bringing Odor here because he knew he had a problem at first base and he had to move LeMahieu over there. So it's not like he sits on his hands and does nothing.
Sure. But there's only so much you can do at this point in the season.
And for the last 2 or 3 years, he's actually pushed all the right buttons. When you think about it, when they brought in Didi Gregorius to take over for Derek Jeter, that was a brilliant move. You know, when they brought in Gio Urshela here to play third base, that was a brilliant move. They brought in Tauchman. He turned out, when he first got here, you know, was awesome. Was an awesome baseball player for them, and was one of the reasons, like guys like he and Mike Ford and Luke Voigt, when they brought Luke Voigt in, when you know all of these different moves that he has made have all worked out. The one area where I think he has, unfortunately, it hasn't worked out for him, has been the starting pitching.
Yeah,
it's the starting pitching.
Well, that's why he had to go get Cole, and he did.
Yeah, but that's a $300 million player that pitches once a week.
I understand, but after that, it's sort of been, okay, what's next? You know, you let Tanaka go. Severino's had his injuries. You thought Davy Garcia would take a step this year. He still may when he comes back. And then you're sort of patchworking the thing with Jamison Tyone and Corey Kluber.
You had Jay Happ brought in. You had Paxton brought in. Yep. You had all these guys brought in. You had Tanaka here. So now you have a completely different pitching staff. But I do think Herman and Severino are going to be big players in this whole thing. You know, maybe it won't all take root until the second half of the season. I'm not sure. And what makes it fun for us is we get to talk about this because they're miserable right now, and they're one of the highest paid teams in the league.
Yeah, well, they just can't get buried is what it comes down to. They can't get buried. And when you're 5 games under 500 this early, I mean, it's a possibility. 5 turns to 10. Then you got to really dig yourself out of a hole.
You know, I'm not an anti-analytic guy. I'm not.
Wow.
No, I've never
really
been.
are changing.
No, I am not changing. You know, the New England Patriots have been doing this for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. But there is a thing that is called, you know, the eye test. You know, you got to go with your gut every now and again. And if a guy has 4 hits on Tuesday, and then you're going to take him out of the lineup on Wednesday just simply because the numbers say that he's not going to hit against the left-handed pitcher that he's going to be seeing, I kind of hate that. That part of it I don't like. Sometimes you got to go with the eye test, and sometimes you got to see it. That's why we say analytics is good, but when you're in a game, you know, sometimes those analytics, they may help you make a decision, but ultimately, if a Garrett Cole is going, you know, he's got 96 pitches and he's in the 8th inning, and it tells you that, you know, pitch 96 to pitch 108 hasn't been good for him in his career. I'm just giving you a hypothetical example. So, therefore, I'm taking him out. As opposed to saying to Garrett Cole, how are you feeling? You feel like you've thrown 96 pitches? You feel like you're spent? You know, and actually getting a real live answer from him and an honest answer from him. And if he says, no, I feel great, I say, all right, you know what? Screw the analytics. I'm putting him back out there because what I've seen today is I want this guy to go back out for another inning and continue, you know, his quest to try to get a complete game.
Yeah.
That's, to me, is where the analytics is fine. You know it, and you know what you have in the bullpen, and you know what you have coming up from the other team. But I also want my manager, I want my coach, I want my hockey coach, I want my basketball coach to know exactly what he's seeing and allow his experience to make those decisions in the heat of battle, which I think is where the coaches really do make their money.
Well, Garrett Cole got up to 109 pitches on Sunday, and one of that was actually going through my head. Like, wow, I'm surprised that they are allowing this to happen at this point. I guess just the feel of the game, where he was,
Good.
Ace,
And
needed it early in the season.
Plus they knew if he was going to throw that many pitches, they knew that this was a game that they had to have, or at least that's the way they felt about it.
Sure, of course.
And they understand what's happening.
No, I know they do. Now, it's just, to me, the downplaying it is not the way to go. I know overreacting, going to the point where it's like, oh, they're done, they're terrible, they're not going to make the playoffs.
Well,
Obviously, I don't feel that.
That's extreme.
That's insane. But, I mean, 5 games under 500 it's an annoying hole to climb out of, even though you are still 15 games into the season. I mean, you have to think about it.
But you just think about that. If they win, let's just say Like the Knicks. The Knicks have won 6 in a row. They are now officially the hottest team in the NBA because Boston lost last night.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Yankees go on a 4-game winning streak, they're 1 game under 500.
I understand.
I mean, so it's not like the end of the world, and they can do it starting tonight.
Oh, they're going to have to do it starting tonight
Eventually they will, and eventually, and don't think for 1 minute that Brian Cashman isn't scouring Major League Baseball looking for the things that they feel are necessary to help them get over the hump and get this thing going the right way. If it's not just for the guys in the locker room already. So there'll be changes, and maybe one of the big changes, maybe Aaron Hicks needs a couple days off. Maybe he just needs to sit and rest and relax. Whatever's bothering him, whatever it may be, maybe he just needs time off.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying out of uniform. I'm saying in uniform, maybe as a pinch hitter or something else. And just let him relax for a minute and let him grapple with whatever he's grappling with, whether it's what's happening in Minneapolis or whatever. Just give him a break. And then when he comes back, hopefully, he'll get his mojo back and he'll be the player that they've paid him to be. I don't know. It's a weird deal. It's baseball. It's 162 games.
I know.
It's a long season.
And we're not used to this because last year we didn't have it.
We're in April, dude.
We have to remind ourselves what it's like to have a 162-game season because it's been a long time.
I don't think, really, honestly, when I think about the pressure of these athletes and all that stuff, and then I think about your personal life, and I think moving and all the crap going on and trying to get cable set up and TVs and you don't have a garage and you got to put stuff in your basement now, and I mean all that crap that you've gone through over the last. I think you've really handled it very well.
Oh, thank you, Bo.
You haven't brought it to work. You haven't let it distract you. You've been focused,
laser focused.
You're laser focused, and look. I could just imagine your day in the beautiful bucolic town of Sable. And just all the things that you're dealing with right now.
Yeah, well,
that none of us see.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. That's a high compliment coming from you.
Oh, yeah.
And I will remain laser focused every single day. You can count on me.
That's what I'm talking about.
All right.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the red bell so you're notified when we have new content.